I'm John and I'm an alcoholic, and I got another story for you, because I always have more than one story. This story goes back to probably right around 1993-94, and at that time I was dating a gal named Barb, soon to become my wife. I met her at a meeting. She was a coffee girl. I asked her if she wanted to go out for coffee after the meeting. I thought that was kind of silly, but she said yes, and we started to see one another, and we were having an awful lot of fun together. But you know, that was for about a year and a half, and then we got married. And the first week of marriage was okay for about a day or two, and then things got a little bit rough. We had to now all of a sudden live together, and we were apparently grinding on one another. And so I was really upset, and I thought, this ain't going to work. I've been married for a week, and I think it's time that we get divorced, is what I was thinking. Thought, but before I do something stupid like that, I think I'm going to call up my mentor, Gene Purvis. Now, Gene Purvis was my grand sponsor and also a psychiatrist and a former Marine fighter pilot. And so I made an appointment with Gene, and I went to see him, and so I come in the office, and he looks at me. He could tell I was disturbed. He says, "John, what are you feeling?" I said, "I'm feeling angry." And he looks at me and he says, "Isn't it wonderful?" I said, "What do you mean wonderful, Gene? I'm angry." He says, "Isn't it wonderful to have feelings?" He says, "You remember when you were drinking?" He says, "And the only feelings you had were negative feelings?" And then he talked about shame and blame and guilt and despair and fear and bewilderment. He says, "You notice anything common amongst those feelings?" "Yeah," I said, "they're all negative." He says, "That's right." He says, "When you're out there drinking, you're living in negativity." He says, "You know how many feelings there are?" I said, "I don't know how many feelings there are, Gene, but I have a feeling you're going to tell me." He says, "There's 88. Everybody knows that." I said, "What do you mean there's 88? Where do you come up with that number?" He said, "Have you ever counted the keys on a piano?" I said, "No." He says, "There's 88, and every one of those keys represents a feeling." He says, "And if you don't drink and you stay sober, you will have the opportunity to feel every one of those feelings. Then," he says, "you can play in the orchestra of life, and you will have a life worth living." That's one of the stories that I have with Gene P., and I had quite a few. He was absolutely a great man, and he helped me so much, and he's made me half the man my dog thinks I am. And I'm very grateful for it. So I'm going to keep coming back to AA. That's it.